Vitruvius was a Roman architect and engineer during the 1st century BC, known for his multi-volume work entitled De Architectura. His discussion of perfect proportion in architecture and the human body led to the famous Renaissance drawing of the Vitruvian Man by Leonardo da Vinci. The idea of human proportions starts with what is referred to as the canon of proportions. This idea, for visual arts, is based on a set of ratios and measurements that are mathematically correct to determine the ideal proportions in which to depict the human figure and body parts. The canon of proportions can be traced all the way to ancient Egyptian times, when artists used a grid to determine the ideal size for their figures, whether it was a painting or a sculpture. The body proportions are textually described by Vitruvius in his 10 books of architecture. There is no known visual representation of the original Vitruvius canon of proportions. A summary of the Vitruvius proportions are shown. A method is now described to construct the Vitruvius canon of proportions using Affinity Suite version 2. The Human Canon of Figure 37 from the 10 books of architecture edited by Rowland and Howe is to be used to show the proportions described by Vitruvius. After opening Publisher within the Affinity Suite, create a new A3 landscape document with the settings as shown. The Human Canon from Figure 37 is next imported into Affinity Publisher. A height of 240mm is to be used to best fit all the Vitruvius proportions as whole number divisions. This does not represent any actual lengths stated by Vitruvius. Vitruvius describes 2 different heights for the Human Canon, and 240mm will be used for both heights in order to best show the proportions. One of the Human Canon proportions that Vitruvius quotes in his 10 books of architecture is that the head from the chin to the crown measures 1/8 of the height of a man. Another proportion quoted by Vitruvius follows: "For the human body is so designed by nature that the face, from the chin to the top of the forehead and the lowest roots of the hair, is 1/10 part of the whole height." The next proportion quoted by Vitruvius is that the middle of the breast to the crown is 1/4 of the height of a man. Another Vitruvius proportion states that the neck and shoulder from the top of the breast to the lowest roots of the hair is 1/6 the height of a man. The next proportion stated by Vitruvius is that the length of the foot is 1/6 the height of the body. Continuing with proportions, Vitruvius also states that the length of the forearm is 1/4 the length of the body. Vitruvius also divides the whole face from the chin to the hairline into 3 equal proportions. The distance from the bottom of the chin to the underside of the nostrils is 1/3 of the whole face. The nose from the underside of the nostrils to a line between the eyebrows is the same. From a line between the eyebrows to the lowest roots of the hair is also 1/3, comprising the forehead. The last Vitruvius proportion relates to the frontal proportion for the width of the breast or chest, and the three interpretations described show the subjectivity of defining an exact measurement related to 1/4 the height of the body. Vitruvius fails to define the gender and their obvious differences in describing his frontal proportion, though the male anatomy is implied. Much later, in 1490, Leonardo da Vinci created his own famous human proportion drawing titled Vitruvian Man. The lines marking the shoulder positions give a width proportion of 1/4 the height of a man, in accordance with Vitruvius's description from his 10 books of architecture. The affinity grid shows this proportion clearly when the height of the Vitruvian Man is scaled up to 240 mm for convenience. The shoulder width and not the breast width show the correct proportion. To conclude, the Human Canon of Figure 37, in conjunction with the Affinity Grid tool, has shown a good correlation with the Vitruvius proportions from his 10 books of architecture. This is a tiny part of this fascinating subject, as there is so much more to explore with the many articles and books related to the proportions of the Human Canon. Future videos will explore more examples of how the Affinity Graphics Suite can be used to reinforce the principles of ancient geometry and metrology.